Right now on Morning News Now, a time of transition in Washington as President Biden welcomes President-elect Trump back to the White House.
Donald, congratulations.
Politics is tough, and it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today.
At the Capitol, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle shocked over Mr. Trump's latest cabinet pick. Embattled Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, once the subject of a since-closed Justice Department probe, now the nominee for Attorney General.
I like Matt a lot. I know him very well, and I'm confident that if the Senate confirms him, he would do a good job.
Mr. Gaetz breaks things to break things, and then once he breaks it even more. And that is somebody who should not be the Attorney General of the United States.
I would describe it as God-tier level trolling.
Plus, Senate Republicans make their selection for a majority leader to replace Mitch McConnell. We have team coverage. Also this morning, President Biden on the world stage for the final summits of his presidency. We'll give you a look at what's at stake. Plus, it's a tale of two autumns depending on where you live. This morning, some cities seeing rain and snow, while others contending with bone-dry conditions. We're tracking the weather, plus a late-season storm churning in the Caribbean. And 23andWho? New privacy concerns over data collected by 23andMe. The genetic testing company struggling to stay in business and cutting 40% of its workforce. We're going to break down the issues and what it could mean for your information. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We begin this Thursday morning with the Trump transition and the nominations that have stunned even Republicans. We now know the GOP will have full control of Congress when the president-elect begins his second term in January. It's because NBC News projects Republicans will maintain control of the House of Representatives for another 2 years with another thin margin. The Senate majority was called for the GOP last week. For Mr. Trump, having control of both chambers will give him broad political power to advance his second-term agenda. In the Senate, South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune was elected majority leader. He replaces longtime Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell. As for the president-elect Trump, well, he met with President Biden in the White House, a cordial affair. It was their first in-person meeting since their debate over the summer. They spoke about having a smooth transition over the next 2 months.
Looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need.
Politics is tough, and it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
President-elect Trump also named more people he intends to nominate for cabinet positions. Two surprise picks are making headlines. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as Attorney General and former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. We have team coverage ahead this hour as the levers of power in Washington now firmly in the hands of Republicans. Let's begin with NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns, who's covering the Trump transition. Dasha, good morning. Busy first week for the Trump transition as the president-elect has named several people to join his administration. Okay. One of those names that is standing out, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is his pick for Attorney General. That caught people in the president's own party by surprise. Gaetz has no experience as a prosecutor, so now he's Mr. Trump's choice to lead a Justice Department that once investigated him for allegations of sex trafficking, but ultimately closed the case. Here's the question, Dasha. Why?
It is a question that a lot of folks in Washington are asking right now, Joe. Look, this is someone who has been a loyal foot soldier for former President Trump in Congress. Steve Bannon, a Trump ally, said he will hit the Justice Department with a, quote, blowtorch. That's really why. No secret that Mr. Trump and the Justice Department have been at odds. He has long talked about completely remaking the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, these agencies, and Gaetz is an agent who could do just that. By the way, Joe, you mentioned that investigation. He had also been under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and that investigation was ongoing, and he's now resigned from Congress. The reactions to this have just been extraordinary. It is sending shockwaves through the Justice Department, through Washington in general. Sources are telling our reporters that he is, quote, uniquely unqualified, saying that this is unimaginable, saying that they're struggling to find words. I mean, this is really shaking folks.
And Dasha, we'll dig into some more of those reactions in just a moment. Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, President-elect Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence. She's been previously accused of amplifying Russian propaganda. She's never worked in the intelligence world. So what does the president-elect think that Gabbard brings to the table? And just what is some of the reaction to her selection?
Yeah, another pretty controversial pick here, Joe. She is someone who has transformed really over the last few years of watching her in the public eye. She was a Democrat, then independent, and now she says she is fully committed to the Republican Party because of President-elect Trump. She's become very close with his allies, people like Charlie Kirk, who's been a big mover and shaker in getting the youth vote, especially getting young men over to the Republican Party and to former President Trump. And the fact that she did abandon the Democratic Party and has been so fiercely loyal to President-elect Trump, that's a big reason why she was selected for this role. But again, someone that does not have the experience necessary for an agency for a role that oversees 18 intelligence agencies and $70 million.
Dasha, it was a big day yesterday in the White House for the incoming and outgoing presidents. Just walk us through that face-to-face meeting and what more we're learning about this transfer of power that's now well underway.
Well, we were told that President-elect Trump came to the White House with a list of questions for President Biden that President Biden tried to answer. Their meeting was nearly 2 hours long. It was productive, we are told, and you saw some of those optics in the view of the public there, sitting in front of a fireplace, cordial, respectful, to the surprise of some, given their bitter relationship in the past. But they both have said that they are committed to a smooth transfer of power, Joe.
All right, Dasha Burns kicking us off this hour. Thank you so much. As promised, let's focus more on President-elect Trump's controversial decision to nominate Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for the role of Attorney General, a choice that is already getting pushback from within his own party. Some Republicans already speaking out, a sign that the MAGA loyalist could face challenges during the confirmation process in the Senate. Here's what Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski had to say about the choice.
I don't think it's a serious nomination for the Attorney General. We need to have a serious Attorney General, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to consider somebody that is serious. This one was not on my bingo card.
Gaetz was the subject of an investigation by the House Ethics Committee over allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. When Gaetz resigned from his House seat last night to prepare for this confirmation process, it essentially ended that probe. Let's get more from NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley. So, Ryan, if he's confirmed, Gaetz would be running a department that once investigated him over allegations he was involved in a scheme related to sex trafficking. Gaetz said he was innocent. In the end, he was not charged. Shortly after that probe ended last year, Gaetz called for federal agencies to be abolished, including the DOJ. Let's listen.
I don't care if it takes every second of our time and every ounce of our energy. We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them if they do not come to heel.
So, Ryan, you and your team have been gathering some rather blunt reactions from within the GOP and among federal law enforcement. Tell us what you're hearing and just what is Gaetz's reputation around Congress, around Washington?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shock, obviously, within DOJ if this were to come about. I mean, right, we have a criminal defendant, Donald Trump, who is retaking the White House. So the idea that, about as close to and up to the line as a theoretical, almost criminal defendant could be in Matt Gaetz as Attorney General kind of, makes sense in terms of they're on the same wavelength. Both of them have these deep grievances against the Justice Department and against the professionals within DOJ who, have been doing their job and sort of are working with one hand behind their back in a lot of ways because they are unable to push back at a lot of these lies that folks like Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz have been spreading about the Justice Department for years now and attacking directly Justice Department employees who really are on just a different playing field and can't operate by the same rules, really no rules that Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump have been operating from. They are able to attack them, make baseless claims about them, lie about January 6th, lie about the handling of those cases, lie about what happened on January 6th itself, lie about DOJ employees, lie about FBI employees without any real repercussions. Whereas, within DOJ, there are a set of rules and here are the set of guidelines that you have to work within. And you can't just be this sort of chaos agent and spread whatever sort of lies that you want. You actually have to stick to the facts and stick to the truth and bring cases forward when there's enough evidence to bring them. And, that was the tricky thing with Matt Gaetz's case there is, they decided that there was not beyond a reasonable doubt that they could bring a case against him. But in Donald Trump's case, they said that there was, and a federal grand jury agreed with them at returning that indictment against Donald Trump. That is, of course, DOA as soon as Donald Trump takes the White House and, make sure that there will be no criminal accountability for Donald Trump's efforts to unlawfully overthrow the results of the 2020 election.
Some of the reactions you and your team have gathered from senior Justice Department officials speaking anonymously. OMG, truly stunning. Someone called it insane, also laughable, we heard. So when we think about how the person in this role will impact President-elect Trump and his agenda, what are some of the things that Matt Gaetz would be overseeing as Attorney General if he's confirmed by the Senate? What kind of background does a typical AG candidate have?
Yeah, not Matt Gaetz's background as the typical AG candidate has. They have professional experience within the Justice Department, some experience, in federal courts. Typically, people who've been arrested for DUIs aren't at the top of the list necessarily. So this is, a much different world that we're walking into. And I should say, he's also pretty progressive. If you wanted to pick something he's pretty progressive on, it's drugs, right? He's in favor of marijuana legalization, which has been something that's only slowly sort of gotten closer to, DOJ sort of pulled back on some more of those marijuana cases. But, there's a really wide berth that the Justice Department really has in impacting every part of American life. And so, it's you don't want to understate the impact that someone like a Matt Gaetz could have if he were indeed to take over the Justice Department.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's take a closer look at one of the other big stories coming out of Washington. South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune will be the new majority leader of the U.S. Senate. Thune was elected by secret ballot yesterday. He'll replace Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, who's stepping down after a record 18 years as leader. In the lower chamber, NBC News is now projecting that Republicans have won control of the House of Representatives. That solidifies the GOP's grip on Washington with full control of Congress and the White House. NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin is here with more on this. Julie, good morning. So we know Senator Thune is a longtime member of Congress, first elected to the Senate 20 years ago. What is important to know just about his political track record and how he compares with Mitch McConnell? And does he have a good working relationship with the president-elect?
Well, he's been working overtime, Joe, to make sure he has a good relationship with the president-elect. That's because, like McConnell, Thune had a turbulent, rocky relationship throughout Donald Trump's first presidency. When he left the White House, Thune actually vied for Tim Scott to be president this time around instead of Trump, of course, then supporting Trump ultimately when he became the nominee of the party. But look, McConnell never said publicly who he supported to succeed him, but you can bet that it was John Thune out of those three military men. This is somebody who, again, in addition to breaking with Trump in the past, has supported aid to Ukraine, is widely respected on both sides of the aisle, is not really a flamethrower, has, again, a good working relationship with pretty much everybody in Washington. And that is part of the reason why he got elected, even though we saw that MAGA pressure campaign behind Rick Scott. And again, he's been working hard to fix that relationship with Trump, visiting him at Mar-a-Lago, having several phone calls, and Trump posted on Truth Social embracing this pick.
So, I mean, Julie, Senator Thune, he has been working toward this goal of leading Senate Republicans for a long time. Finally happens, it's his big day, and then moments later, he gets the surprise. Matt Gaetz is Trump's pick for Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard for DNI Director. These are people now he may have to try and shepherd through the nomination process. Do we know his reaction to these choices?
Oh, yeah, the first big major test for Senate Republicans. And look, Thune had to have expected this or seen it coming. He knows the job that he signed up for. He knows exactly who Trump is. We didn't catch him after the Gaetz news came out, but he did speak about this idea of Trump's recess appointments, this threat essentially that Trump made in asking anyone who becomes the Senate Majority Leader to be open to that idea. This is something that hasn't happened since President Obama was in office. There was a gentleman's agreement between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate not to do that. That essentially means that the Senate is recessed and then Trump can push through whoever he wants without Senate confirmation. Take a listen to what Thune had to say to that idea.
What we're going to do is make sure that we are processing his nominees in a way that gets them into those positions so they can implement his agenda.
Look, Thune, Tulsi Gabbard, some of these wild card names are going to have an uphill battle to confirmation. They do have a padding, a couple of seats, even with defections, that they should be able to get anybody Trump wants through. But Thune said he prefers regular order, but all options are on the table.
And Julie, as we mentioned, NBC News officially projected yesterday that Republicans will maintain control of the House. That gives Republicans an edge, a thin majority. What does that mean for the next 2 years?
Well, and speaking of Gaetz, the first reaction from Steve Scalise, who is a member of House Republican leadership, was stop taking our guys, because as you see that map on your screen, there are still a couple of races that are yet to be called. But Republicans right now, right at that 218 margin, they had about a 4 or 5 seat majority in the last 2 years. This is when they played offense because a Democrat, of course, has been in the White House. This time, Trump has a bold agenda. They want to overhaul tax policy, extending some of the Trump 2017 tax cuts. They want to change the way our southern border works, overhaul immigration policy, and end some critical federal regulations. You're going to need broad sweeping powers to make that happen. And certainly the majority they have right now in the House is very, very tight. It's why you have pushback from House Republicans on Trump taking any more of their guys into the cabinet.
Yeah, we should note it's not just Gaetz, it's Waltz, it's Stefanik, have all been tapped to be in the Trump administration. Those people have to be replaced in Congress. So that's an issue there. Julie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. President Biden is preparing to leave later today for some of his final appearances as president on the global stage. He's traveling to Peru for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. It's also known as APEC. While there, he is expected to hold talks with China's President Xi. After that, he'll head to Brazil for the G20 Leaders Summit. The meetings come amid a whole host of global crises and President-elect Trump's impending return to office. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now to talk more about all this. Monica, good morning. So we understand President Biden is going to meet with his Chinese counterpart on Saturday. What can we expect from this meeting? And just, I mean, how much of a shadow will President-elect Trump be casting here, especially when you consider his promise to impose tariffs on Chinese exports to the U.S.?
I think that's a huge part of the dynamic here, Joe, and the White House is certainly aware of that. They thought if the election had gone in a different direction and what they wanted to see happen, that this meeting would be looking very different in terms of handing off to a potential Harris administration. But of course, she lost, and now they know that Donald Trump is coming back to return to Washington and take over the White House. And so that does change some of the conversations here and what they're going to be trying to nail down. Now, this is going to be the last meeting between President Biden and President Xi. Remember, they were last together about a year ago when they had that summit in Woodside, California, and they set out on some agreements and areas of cooperation that we're told they're going to try to have a final update on, see if they can kind of commit to a couple of things that could be smoothly transitioned now to a Donald Trump administration. But there is this awareness that there's a lot there that likely could be undone and that could change. And so this is more about trying to send that message diplomatically that the U.S. is trying to maintain with not just allies, but also countries like China that they have had conflict with, certainly over the last 4 years, and where there have been a lot of tensions, but trying to highlight the fact that they've been able to simmer those to some degree. So there will be discussions of economic cooperation for sure, but also trying to strengthen the U.S. position in the Indo-Pacific overall. Joe.
From there's going to be nearly 24 world leaders at that G20 summit in Rio. That's the president's second stop. Just what's his main message going to be to leaders there as he prepares to leave office?
Yeah, and before he arrives, he's going to be making history as the first sitting president from the United States to visit the Amazon. So he's going to be doing that first as well. And then when he gets to the G20, this is a story that the president often tells, that when he first came to office in 2021, he would go to summits like this one. He would try to reassure allies and world leaders like the ones he's going to encounter here that America was back and that the world leaders would respond to him, okay, quote, but for how long? And so now this is sort of the continuation to that, which the answer is going to be, well, in the view of the Biden administration and the president, only for 4 years. So there will be conversation certainly about some concerns that some allies have expressed. But there are also allies who have certainly said that they are ready to work with Donald Trump, and they have different priorities and different things that they want to accomplish. So this is about trying to shore up this image, but in reality, we know that there's so much change coming on the global stage, and the world leaders will likely reflect that in their conversations with the president as well.
Without a doubt. All right, Monica Alba, thank you so much. Some wet weather expected on both coasts this morning, but the Northeast still not getting any of that much needed rain. For more details, let's check in on your morning news now weather with meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, unfortunately, we will not see that rain in the Northeast. We do have an unsettled pattern still continuing in the West, and this is what's happening in the East. We have a cold front that's stretching from the Great Lakes through the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley down to the Southeast. The problem in the Northeast is we have a big area of high pressure, and it's pushing this rain down to the south. As this front moves a little bit closer, you're going to sort of see it spin and keep the Northeast dry. Unfortunately, we're going to see some showers, some snow showers into northern Maine by tomorrow, but that is about it. So this is the setup here. There's that cold front, beneficial rain for parts of the Midwest, also parts of the Mid-Atlantic, and this will bring heavy rain to parts of the Carolinas. We're going to see an area of low pressure form off the coast here. It's going to enforce this rain that's falling with the cold front. So we're going to see some really windy conditions too later on in the Carolinas later on tonight. But notice what happens here. We stay dry, unfortunately, throughout parts of New England and also the Northeast, much needed areas for some rain. And that's going to be the case as we go through at least the next 7 days. We're not looking at rain in the New York City area, Philadelphia area until next Wednesday. So rain for some, not all. As we go towards tomorrow, we're going to see this cold front moving off the coast, and then the winds really pick up. That's a problem because we're so dry, really low humidity, and we're going to see those winds picking up. So then once again, our fire danger really does ramp up on Friday. Taking a look at the rainfall forecast, I mentioned the heaviest rain falling throughout West Virginia into Virginia, North Carolina, and that's because we're going to see that coastal low really reinforcing the rain that is falling today. Where you see those darker colors, that's the heaviest rain expected, corresponding to 2-3 inches on the map here. And that will be today. It's going to move out by early tomorrow. The fire weather threat, mentioning this for tomorrow, so as winds ramp up as that storm system pulls away, we're going to see places from Boston and Newport, Hartford, Bridgeport, Easton, Philadelphia under the gun for some really gusty winds and really looking at the chance for some fire danger once again tomorrow. Now we have the temperatures. It is chilly outside. If you haven't been outside yet, you need the coat in parts of the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, because we are looking at temperatures in the 40s and 50s. 50 degrees today in New York City. That's about 5 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. We're so used to those mild temperatures, so anything below average feels really chilly. Lynchburg, 48 degrees, Columbia, 57. But back to the west behind this cold front, we are mild. We're looking at temperatures in the 50s and 60s, well above normal for this time of year. We're looking at Wichita, 63 degrees, 55 in Omaha. That will be the story as we go throughout tomorrow, keeping it warm in those spots. But notice in New York City, we're going to ramp it up to into the upper 50s, near 60. And we will keep it mild. So if you like this mild temperatures, not today, that's a chilly day. We're going to look at temperatures warming up in Philadelphia by Sunday. Also Monday, temperatures back near 70 on Monday. Unsettled west, we've been talking about this all week long. We're going to continue to talk about this because we have an atmospheric river that's moving on shore again tomorrow, unsettled once again today. The rain and snow lingering from Washington to California. We're going to see gusty winds really gusting in those mountain ranges with the snow falling. It's going to create some tricky travel today and also tomorrow.
It feels like we never do average anymore. It's always like way over or way under.
Overachiever, underachiever. It's never just, right?
What happened to average?
Average is okay.
All right.
Look at me.
Look at us. Look, we're here. Average. Thanks, Michelle. You're above average. All right. Much more to come here on Morning News. Now, later this hour, low spirits. Budget carrier Spirit Airlines reportedly close to bankruptcy after a failed merger with Frontier. More on the financial fallout and what it could mean for passengers. Up first, after the break, police in Paris now preparing for unrest ahead of a soccer match between France and Israel. We are going to take you there when we come back. Extra security will be in place today across Paris for the soccer match between France and Israel. Authorities are deploying around 4,000 police officers, identifying the match as a potential flashpoint after violence in Amsterdam when an Israeli team played there last week. NBC News international correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now from Paris with more on this. Kelly, good morning.
Good morning to you, Joe. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, is expected to attend the match here tonight in a show of solidarity, along with some 20,000 soccer fans. Today, the police chief of Paris called this match high risk. This morning, Paris is on high alert ahead of tonight's face-off between the French and Israeli national soccer teams. Tension soaring after violence around a soccer game in Amsterdam last week and anti-Semitic attacks in the days after. Before that game, footage showed Israeli fans attacking people, chanting anti-Arab slogans, and tearing a Palestinian flag. Later, groups of rioters seeking out and attacking Israelis throughout the city. And over the weekend, a masked mob attacking a tram and shouting "Cancer Jews." Nearly 300 were arrested in the Dutch capital last night, many for ignoring police orders to disperse. In Paris today, 4,000 French police officers will be deployed around the National Stadium and across the city.
At the moment, everything is fine. We are feeling safe.
Overnight, pro-Palestinian and left-wing Jewish groups took to the streets in largely peaceful protests.
There's no other way than peace.
Some calling for a ceasefire deal, as a new video was released of an Israeli hostage held in Gaza, pleading with Israelis not to forget the hostages. President Biden meeting with the families of American hostages yesterday and discussing their plight in his meeting with President-elect Trump. 7 American citizens are still held in Gaza.
We have asked the president and his senior staff, as well as the incoming administration, to begin work immediately together, arm in arm.
A pro-Palestinian group this morning has called for a demonstration later today against this match in Paris. The Paris police chief said it will go ahead, but demonstrators will be kept away from the neighborhoods around the stadium. Joe.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. In the Middle East, there was another round of airstrikes by Israeli forces in central Lebanon and Gaza. NBC's Matt Bodner joins us with that and some other world headlines. Matt, good morning.
Joe, good morning. At least 6 people were killed and 15 others injured yesterday in an IDF strike on a village in central Lebanon. Yesterday, they also launched strikes on facilities in Beirut that Israel says were used by Hezbollah for military purposes. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of pursuing a policy of forced displacement of Palestinian civilians. Israel's continued operation in both Gaza and Lebanon comes as members of Netanyahu's cabinet have been sounding off in approval of Trump's picks for various cabinet roles, in particular Mike Huckabee for U.S. ambassador to Israel. Moving along now to Spain. A new wave of storms has forced school closures and train cancellations across the country. Coastal areas of Valencia remain on alert today, just 2 weeks after that region was devastated by massive flooding. Forecasters are saying that Valencia could see 7 inches of rainfall in a 5-hour period. Meanwhile, in Malaga province, streets have been flooded and 3,000 people have been moved from their homes as a precautionary measure. The nation is braced for more weather. And we'll finish this hour in the Southwest Pacific. Scientists say that they have found the largest ever recorded coral. For reference, this mega coral is a network of tiny interlinked creatures that together form one organism. It's not to be confused with a coral reef. Scientists say that this coral could be more than 300 years old, and it is bigger than a blue whale. The discovery was made by a videographer working aboard a National Geographic research vessel studying the effects of climate change on remote parts of the Pacific. Joe?
All right, fascinating, Matt. Thank you so much. Coming up, a DNA dilemma. Genetic testing company 23andMe facing financial fallout and an uncertain future as concerns grow over who owns customers' data. We're going to break down the fine print next on Morning News Now. We're back now with a story sparking debate over how much freedom parents should be able to give to their children. This stems from an incident in Georgia where a mother now faces jail time because her son walked into town all by himself. NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vasugian shows us how that mom is fighting back.
A mother of 4, shocked to be arrested in front of her children.
It was anger and frustration, of course, because my children were having to witness that.
All because her then 10-year-old son was spotted walking alone in Mineral Bluff, Georgia, a town with a population of about 370.
It's really not even a town, hardly. It's not a super dangerous or even dangerous at all stretch of road.
Brittany Patterson lives less than a mile from town with her father and children. On October 30th of this year, she had to take her eldest son to a medical appointment. Her youngest son, Soren, didn't want to come, she said, so she left him at home. Then she received a call from a police officer.
So when you got that phone call from the police officer saying, hey, do you know your kid is in town? What did you think?
I said no. I didn't know he was in town. I was not expecting them to say that, but I wasn't terrified for him or scared for his safety.
The police officer drove Soren home, she says, and made it clear it was problematic. Brittany didn't know where Soren was. At that point, Brittany thought the ordeal was over until officers showed up that evening to arrest her.
They asked me to put my hands behind my back and all that stuff, and I realized what was going on.
Brittany was taken to county jail, booked, and then released on $500 bail. She's now facing a misdemeanor charge of reckless conduct. The arrest warrant saying she, quote, knowingly did endanger the bodily safety of her juvenile son. If found guilty, she could face up to 1 year in prison and a $1,000 fine. The DA's office didn't provide us with a comment. Local police declined to issue a statement, and we did not hear back from Child Services. Prosecutors asking Brittany to sign a safety plan before they'd consider dropping the charges, according to her lawyer.
We want to witness you downloading the app, GPS app to your son's phone. Okay. And then you've got to check on where he is. Really? And he's got to let you or grandma know where he is at all times.
But Brittany and her attorney are unwilling to accept this deal.
This is not right. I did nothing wrong. And I'm going to fight for that.
The story is striking a nerve as technology inundates our lives, giving parents more control over their children. So how much freedom should kids still get?
Like, are all parents going to have to put GPS on their child?
And when I asked about the law in Georgia, when it comes to kids being able to be on their own,
that parents get to decide for their children unless it is unreasonably dangerous.
And Brittany agrees it should be a personal decision.
You know, part of it is knowing your neighborhood and knowing your area and what your level of comfortability is with each child.
An assessment Brittany made about Soren and hopes the DA will as well.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
The future of the genetic testing company 23andMe is unclear. The company announced it's going to cut 40% of its workforce in an effort to stay open. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk has more on their fight for survival and what this could all mean for customers' genetic data.
When 23andMe launched nearly 20 years ago, the promise was enticing.
My DNA journey started here.
Millions of customers eager to upload their DNA.
23andMe research is focused on discovering new information about genes.
But earlier this week, 23andMe's CEO warned investors that there was substantial doubt that the company could keep operating. announcing it was cutting 40% of its workforce, 200 jobs, and it will stop development of its therapeutics division. The stock price cratering 75% this year. And while the company says it is looking to go private and isn't looking to sell, some customers may be concerned about their very personal data.
For people who want to erase their accounts with 23andMe, is that possible?
Yeah, so in the privacy policy, it does say that individuals can request for their account to be closed. And if that happens, they delete the sample and delete the account.
The financial update comes just 2 months after the company settled a class action lawsuit stemming from a 2023 cyber attack. Data for 6.9 million customers was posted on the dark web. 23andMe agreeing to pay $30 million and give those customers 3 years of security monitoring. In a statement this week, 23andMe says, "We are committed to protecting customer data and are consistently focused on maintaining the privacy of our customers. That will not change. The future of their business may depend on it." Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Joining us now to continue the conversation is Anya Prince, who you just saw there in Stephanie's piece. She's a professor at the University of Iowa College of Law. Professor Prince, good morning. This was so interesting. We appreciate you waking up to talk more about it with us. I mean, in the story, you spoke a bit about how people can delete their accounts, but what protections do users have under 23andMe's current user agreement? And also, just what should people know if they've been looking to sign up or maybe they just created an account?
Yeah, I think the number one thing to remember in our country is that HIPAA, the law that many people have heard about that protects health information, only applies within the healthcare setting. And so 23andMe actually does not have to comply with HIPAA. And so really the only thing that at the federal level that is protecting users' information is that privacy agreement. And we all know, most of us, the vast majority of us, including me as a privacy scholar, doesn't read those privacy notices when we have to click yes. So it's important to know what's in those privacy agreements.
Always important to remember that no matter what you're signing up for. We often skip over that stuff. So we just heard in that report, 23andMe said it had substantial doubt that it could continue operating. This is sort of a last gasp effort here. If the company's forced to sell, what happens to the data of people who don't close their accounts? I have to imagine it could be worth money to a company or to law enforcement, which has been using this information to solve a lot of crimes.
Yeah, so in that user agreement, it actually says that in the event of sale or bankruptcy, the user's data, the consumer's data, goes with the new company. And it does say that the new company has to comply with that privacy agreement. But the privacy agreement also says that it can be changed at any time. And so there's the potential that people might be comfortable with how 23andMe has been sharing their data, but that a new company or a new entity looking into this might change those policies.
What is the safest way for people who are interested in this kind of genetic testing? They want to learn more about their backgrounds, that they can do this, but also just protect their data in a better way?
Yeah, so unfortunately in the US, we don't have a general data privacy law. And so it's really hard to engage in these types of direct consumer genetic testing. Really, we're at the mercy of the companies and the privacy policies that they have. If people want more protection, we can get testing within the medical setting where HIPAA would apply. But of course, not everybody can access that. They might not have a medical indication for it. So I think it's really important for people to know what type of sharing they're comfortable with and then see whether that company that they're looking into getting tested with matches those values.
You say in the U.S., do other countries have better laws, better policies?
Yeah, so for example, the European Union has a broad, just general data protection. And so your information, not just your health information, but all of your information has some greater protections, and companies have to, ask for your consent to use data more often.
All right. Professor Anya Prince, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, drowning in debt. A new report by the Fed shows that Americans owe trillions of dollars, but one specific kind of debt is keeping people underwater. We're going to break down the numbers. Plus, it bills itself as a low-cost carrier. Now, Spirit Airlines could be close to bankruptcy. The financial fallout after a failed merger with Frontier. This is Morning News Now. We are back with a new report from the Federal Reserve that shows U.S. household debt is at an all-time high. It hit nearly $18 trillion this quarter, with mortgages understandably accounting for the majority of that total. But as NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans explains, it's credit card debt that can actually be the most costly debt for Americans.
Mortgages, car loans, credit cards. Americans are borrowing more than ever. U.S. household debt now at $17.94 trillion. For credit cards, that debt has never cost more. The average interest rate almost 22%, way higher than auto loans and mortgage rates.
I was like, holy, like it was hundreds of dollars per month. I'm like, I could be spending that on groceries.
Just in interest.
Just in interest.
Jamie Parker is chipping away at her part of the record $1.17 trillion Americans now hold in credit card debt.
I was in about $60,000 worth of debt when this all started, just to be able to live for the year with my kids.
The marketing professional and single mother of two leaned on credit cards when she was laid off 3 different times during the pandemic.
I've really had to cut back.
Researchers at the New York Fed say wages are rising, making higher debt levels manageable for many, but delinquency rates remain elevated.
It's something that we're keeping a close eye on, just because if households aren't able to manage their debt obligations, that suggests something more distressing is happening in household balance sheets.
Jamie is now in a program to help clear her debt, paying off 2 big cards at $535 a month for the next 5 years. Her experience showing how with rates so high, even a little debt can spiral. Experts recommend paying more than the minimum payment, consider zero-interest balance transfer offers, and work with a credit counselor to consolidate debt.
It just takes one job loss or one interest rate spike or one emergency purchase to kind of put you over the edge.
Yes, it does. It's a very slippery slope.
Christine Romans, NBC News, New York.
Speaking of sticky financial situations, Spirit Airlines might be preparing to file for bankruptcy after merger talks with Frontier fell through. A new report from the Wall Street Journal says the low-cost carrier is now in advanced negotiations with its bondholders, and a filing could happen within weeks. Joining us now, one of the authors of that report, Allison Sider. She's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Allison, thanks for joining us this morning. First, just to help us understand how the company got here and what filing for bankruptcy would allow it to do.
Yeah, Spirit is what's known as an ultra low cost carrier. So it charges really low base fares and there's fees for everything else. And for years, that business model was really successful and really profitable. But coming out of the pandemic, airlines like Spirit have had a lot of problems. The bigger airlines have gotten a lot better at competing with them. Spirit has not started making money again post-pandemic, so it's losing a lot of money. It was supposed to merge with JetBlue. A federal judge blocked that merger earlier this year, and it's been kind of trying to find its footing ever since.
And if it could file for bankruptcy, what would that do?
Well, a lot of airlines have gone through bankruptcy over the years. It probably doesn't mean very much for Spirit Flyers right now. It's renegotiating with creditors. It has some looming debt deadlines. So that's kind of what it's hoping to address through bankruptcy. It's not looking to go out of business at this point. It'll keep flying. So not a huge impact for Flyers just yet, but a big question about what role Spirit will play in the industry, how big Spirit will be going forward.
So the company is currently in talks with lenders about restructuring its debt. Where do things stand with that? If that fails, what might happen?
So, Spirit, after our story ran, came out and said it's in advanced talks with the super majority of its creditors. If it reaches an agreement for a statutory restructuring, is what it called it, it'll likely wipe out the existing shareholders. We understand that their Chapter 11 filing is, fairly imminent in the coming weeks. And Spirit said if it doesn't reach such an agreement, it will consider all other options. We know that they were having talks for a potential merger with Frontier. That's another budget airline that had been interested in buying Spirit in the past. But Frontier has, at least for now, called those talks off. So, once Spirit is in bankruptcy, it's possible there could be another airline that comes in that's interested in acquiring it or acquiring some of its assets. And, we'll have to wait and see.
So for now, what does all this mean for Spirit's workers and also its customers? Even though, business is down for them, many customers rely on Spirit to travel when they can't afford other airlines.
Yeah, Spirit has been a hugely disruptive force in the airline industry. Is really a trailblazer in this space, betting that there were a lot of people who had just been priced out. So Spirit was attracting customers when it converted to this model who were taking the bus or driving and who didn't have a way to fly. And that's, sort of what, when the government challenged this merger with JetBlue, that's their hope, was that Spirit would remain independent and it would grow and it would be this huge challenger to the bigger airlines. Because when Spirit enters the market, the other airlines have to adjust. They don't want to look like they have higher prices. So now that Spirit's kind of on the back foot, I think there's a question about this business model going forward and whether it's still going to be as disruptive.
All right. Allison Sider, appreciate your time this morning and your reporting. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Staying on your money, OpenAI is reportedly prepping to launch a high-tech agent that can do your work for you. CNBC's Silvana Henao has more of that and other dollar sign headlines. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. So OpenAI reportedly plans to launch a new tool early next year that can control computers and perform tasks independently. So the tool, codenamed Operator, will be debuted initially for researchers and developers in January. And the move marks a pivotal shift toward AI systems that can actively engage with computers instead of just processing text and images. Apple is facing legal problems in the UK as a consumer watchdog group accuses the company of effectively locking 40 million customers into iCloud and overcharging them. The group says that the legal action could result in a nearly $4 billion payout if successful, or that's about $90 per person. Apple has rejected claims its practices are anti-competitive, saying users aren't required to use iCloud. And it's Red Cup Day at Starbucks, one of the most anticipated days for fans of the coffee chain. Starbucks rewards members who order select holiday drinks get a free limited edition Red Holiday Cup. And this year's reusable cup is made with 95% recycled materials and is only available while supplies last. Holiday-themed drinks can be ordered in-store, at the drive-thru, on the Starbucks app, or for delivery, Joe.
I know a lot of folks look forward to that. I don't need any more cups.
Me either. I'm constantly cleaning up the cupboard, trying to just get rid of the ones I don't use anymore.
I know. There's just a lot of cups out there. So, all right. But good, we're reusing them. All right. Silvana, thank you so much. Coming up, from competition to compassion. When we come back, the viral video serving as a heartwarming reminder of the power of sportsmanship. You're watching Morning News now. We are back with a heartwarming story that shows the power of sportsmanship. A high school cross-country runner helped her injured competitor cross the finish line. The moment was captured on video and is going viral on social media. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas spoke to both athletes about that moment.
The girls' cross-country team at Arkansas's Batesville High School knows how to finish strong. For Kaylee Montgomery, in the final race of her high school career, that looked a little different. The senior, approaching the finish line at the state championships, noticed her competitor doubled over just short of the finish line after her legs gave out in the final stretch.
She was on the ground. I just saw her, and my first instinct and just my first thought that came to my mind was that I have to help her and that I can't leave her.
Kaylee, exhausted from pushing through a 3.1-mile course at race pace, had been chasing down her PR from the year before. Her dad recording this video and expecting his daughter's typical big finish to the end. But instead of picking up her pace, she decided to pick up her competitor, Julia. She says her strength in that moment didn't come from her training.
If I was down and falling, Jesus wouldn't pass me by. And so that was kind of what was going through my head, that I couldn't leave her, pass her by.
Kaylee and Julia had never met, But in a powerful moment, the two created a team of their own.
She started praying over me, and it really did give me strength to finish and just try to get up. And then every now and then I would look back up and see the finish line getting closer, and she would say, we're almost there, which was really encouraging.
The video of the finish getting over 3 million views on TikTok. Kaylee's dad, Pastor Robert, proud that his little girl is making strides to uplift others one step at a time.
It's great for people to see that good things are happening in the world. That there's still kindness, there's still love, there's still caring for one another.
Others agree. A few collegiate coaches reaching out to Kaylee about scholarships.
They were impressed with my times, but it was also more of my sportsmanship and just caring that I had for others around me.
For Julia, it wasn't the finish she and her coach envisioned.
She worked so hard to get to that certain level and just let her know that this race did not define her.
But what she won instead may be even sweeter.
This is an experience that you can definitely form a friendship on, and by her actions alone, I can tell that she is a great person that I definitely want to be friends with.
And to top it off, Kaylee still scored a personal best. Guad Venegas, NBC News.
Now that is a lesson for all of us. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now. Good Thursday morning. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment today. Right now on Morning News Now, another political shock to the system. President-elect Donald Trump taps controversial Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to lead the Justice Department as his Attorney General. Gaetz now stepping down from his role on Capitol Hill in the wake of that surprise announcement. But he's not the only Trump pick that's raising eyebrows in Washington. We've got team coverage in just a moment. Overseas, the heightened security concerns gripping Paris this morning ahead of a highly anticipated soccer match between France and Israel. Comes on the heels of shocking anti-Semitic violence that rocked Amsterdam after an Israeli-Dutch game last week. How the nation is bracing for the worst. Plus, a troubling new health alert surrounding that deadly McDonald's E. coli outbreak. More than 100 people nationwide now sickened from slivered onions on its popular Quarter Pounders. What you need to know the next time you hit the drive-thru. And can popular weight loss drugs like Ozempic actually help curb alcohol use? Later in the hour, we're going to dig into the risks and rewards of treatment and the new developments that could provide a path to hope for the millions of Americans struggling with addiction. We're going to begin this hour with the Trump transition, which is now in its second week. The president-elect is releasing a steady stream of names that he intends to nominate for cabinet positions. Among them, a stunner, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. President-elect Trump made the announcement yesterday on social media. Gaetz, who was at one point under federal investigation for alleged sex trafficking, has been a Trump ally on Capitol Hill. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has more.
Hey there, good morning to you. Of all the president-elect's choices so far, this one landing like a grenade. Gaetz, a well-known combative defender of Mr. Trump, an attorney by training, but one with no experience as a government prosecutor or as a judge, now tapped to lead the nation's premier law enforcement agency, the very same one he lambasted for years, all setting up a rocky path to his confirmation.
This morning, questions swirling over whether Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, one of Capitol Hill's most vocal critics of the Justice Department, can get confirmed to lead it.
I don't think it's a serious nomination for the Attorney General.
Praised by the president-elect as a deeply gifted and tenacious attorney, writing Gaetz will, quote, root out the systemic corruption at the DOJ, a department Mr. Trump has long railed against as he's faced multiple criminal investigations, even musing at one point that prosecutors should be thrown in jail, and saying this when asked if he would use the justice system to go after perceived political enemies.
Look, when this election is over, based on what they've done, I would have every right to go after them.
Gaetz often serving as an attack dog for Mr. Trump.
that the lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service.
We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them, if they do not come to heel.
And saying this back in 2020.
Maybe I should serve as Attorney General of the United States. If necessary, I'd fire every little kicker at the J. Edgar Hoover building.
Within the DOJ, reaction to the nomination scathing. Multiple current and former senior officials left speechless, calling it insane, unbelievable, and one saying he is the least qualified person ever nominated for a position in the Department of Justice. Some officials raising concerns about the would-be top lawyer for the country having been the subject of a years-long federal investigation for alleged sex trafficking of a 17-year-old girl. The prosecutors ultimately closed the case without charges, and Gaetz consistently maintained his innocence.
I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false.
A bipartisan investigation into his conduct by the House Ethics Committee had been ongoing, though Gaetz' speedy resignation from Congress yesterday means that investigation comes to an immediate halt. Gaetz frequently clashing with members of his own party, leading a successful charge to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
I would hope there wouldn't be another Matt Gaetz in the Republican Party. At the end of the day, he probably shouldn't be on the streets.
Now, the House was set to release a report of its findings this coming Friday, according to the Washington Post, but it's unclear if it will still release them with no jurisdiction to investigate Gaetz any further as a congressman. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you. President-elect Trump also named former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard as his pick for Director of National Intelligence. Gabbard has left the Democratic Party, becoming a high-profile Trump supporter, but she's facing scrutiny over her record. This comes as the president-elect met with President Biden as the transition of power gets underway in earnest. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander reports from Washington.
Good morning. The White House described that meeting as cordial and substantive. President-elect Trump saying President Biden was very gracious. But even before Trump landed back in Florida, he rolled out his most polarizing picks, perhaps testing the limits of his power. Among them, Tulsi Gabbard, who he selected as Director of National Intelligence to oversee the entire intelligence community that Trump has long viewed as one of his greatest adversaries within government.
President-elect Trump returning to Mar-a-Lago last night, singing God Bless America with billionaire Elon Musk at his side. As he ramps up the transition process, his new choice for Director of National Intelligence is already facing scrutiny. Tulsi Gabbard, a military veteran who was once a Democratic congresswoman and Trump critic.
It's important that our commander-in-chief have a military mindset. That military mindset doesn't mean you walk around looking tough, making idle threats.
Gabbard has since endorsed Trump and changed parties. In the role, she would be privy to the nation's most closely guarded secrets, oversee 18 intelligence agencies, and be the president's main advisor on intelligence matters. Gabbard has publicly questioned many assessments of the U.S. intelligence community. She secretly met with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad in 2017, blamed the U.S. and NATO for Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and has shared Russian claims about Ukraine that have been discredited by lawmakers. Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, a former CIA officer, writing, not only is she ill-prepared and unqualified, but she traffics in conspiracy theories and cozies up to dictators like Bashar al-Assad and Vladimir Putin. All of it after the president-elect capped his comeback at the White House at the invitation of President Biden. Biden vowing a smooth transition.
Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need, and we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So good. Welcome. Welcome back.
And, politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. And a transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
Trump telling the New York Post that he and Biden discussed the war in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East, adding, I wanted to know his views on where we are and what he thinks.
Senate Republicans also making a major announcement that South Dakota Senator John Thune is going to be their new majority leader. He's the first leader of the party in the Senate since Mitch McConnell, who, of course, had held that position for nearly 2 decades. Thune beat out Texas Senator John Cornyn and Florida Senator Rick Scott, the MAGA favorite. Thune even rejected Trump's false election claims in 2020, but notably he's worked to build his relationship with the president-elect, and this week appeared open to Trump's demand that the Senate make recess appointments for some cabinet picks that could avoid a Senate vote on some of them entirely. Back to you guys.
All right, Peter, thank you. Let's talk a little more about the expected nomination of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence with our global security reporter, Dan DeLuce. Dan, just first and foremost, what's some of the reaction you're hearing from the intelligence community to this pick?
You know, I think a lot of intelligence professionals are concerned, and a lot of former officers are very concerned, alarmed, and kind of shocked at this selection. However, this is a very apolitical workforce that really is committed to the mission and has served different presidents and served under difficult circumstances before. And they feel like their job is to call the balls and strikes and deliver the intelligence as they see it. And so I think they're going to give Gabbard maybe the benefit of the doubt to begin with. But there are huge concerns about, first of all, her complete lack of experience. She's never worked in the intelligence realm in any shape or fashion. And then, of course, all these comments that she's made that have really cast doubt and really disagreed with the intelligence assessments coming from the U.S. and U.S. allies.
Let's talk more about why there is such concern. You've been digging into Gabbard's history, her foreign policy views. Help us understand her position on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and why it is so at odds with current U.S. intelligence assessments.
That's right. I think the best example is what she said about what she called U.S. biological labs that she said were in Ukraine. And that was very much echoing what has been a long-held conspiracy theory that Russia has tried to promote now over the past 4 years, and that's been taken up by some right-wing voices in the West, and that is that somehow the U.S. has some kind of biological weapons labs in Ukraine. The U.S. does not. That's been completely debunked. And her other lawmakers, including Republicans, accused her of parroting Russian propaganda and disinformation and falling into that trap and calling her even traitorous. She pushed back sharply. She said, listen, I was just talking about biological labs, not biological weapons labs. And she tried to clarify it. She rejected that label and said, she's not some kind of propagandist for Russia, but she has been repeatedly accused of being sympathetic to Russia's point of view. And she also has claimed that she feels that the U.S. had somehow recognized Russia's concerns about Ukraine wanting to join NATO, that could have prevented the Russian invasion. And of course, U.S. intelligence assessments indicated otherwise, that Putin was plotting to invade Ukraine very clearly. And he cited many different reasons for doing it, many contradictory reasons even. So she's going to be at odds with some of the analysts in the intelligence agencies who see Russia as the main threat in terms of promoting and promulgating disinformation that's aimed at U.S. and to divide up Americans against each other.
Dan, let's also talk about the Middle East. Gabbard has been critical of U.S. foreign policy there, including Mr. Trump's approach to the region during his first term. Tell us about that now, how she explained that 2017 meeting with Syria's President Assad.
So this is really interesting. This shows you how different the Republican Party is with the appearance of Trump. Gabbard has always been very anti-interventionist, kind of a dove, what some people would call an isolationist, very critical of U.S. foreign policy around the world and in the Middle East. And she was really critical and scathing about Trump's decision during his first term to assassinate a top Iranian general, General Soleimani. She said it was unconstitutional. So that's a real contradiction, but Trump was willing to overlook that.
All right, Dan DeLuce, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Multiple demonstrations broke out across Paris on Wednesday night to protest a pro-Israel gala in the city. Protesters waving Palestinian flags clashed with police in riot gear who had to deploy tear gas against the crowds. Extra security precautions are in place across Paris ahead of today's soccer match between France and Israel. Authorities have identified the match as a potential flashpoint after shocking scenes of violence following a game in Amsterdam last week that featured an Israeli team and fans. French President Macron is expected to attend today's game in a sign of support for Israeli football fans. NBC News international correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now from Paris with more on this. Kelly, good morning. Just what more can you tell us about the protests that broke out last night?
So, good morning, Joe. Yeah, the protests last night were separate from the game today. They were actually focused toward a gala that was supposed to be held last night in Paris. One of the invitees was a very controversial Israeli minister. He ended up canceling. He did not attend that gala, but those protests went ahead nonetheless. One group was a pro-Palestinian group, another group a left-wing Israeli Jewish group here in Paris. There are separate demonstrations. Police said that there were some small skirmishes at the pro-Palestinian rally, but those were contained relatively quickly, and they said that both protests were mostly peaceful. Joe.
So, Kelly, how is the city now preparing for any potential unrest today ahead of the soccer match between France and Israel?
Well, Joe, we're here at the National Stadium, and you can probably see some of the security measures behind me right here. A lot of barricades put up around the stadium. There is a heavy police presence here already. Some 4,000 police officers will be on the streets in Paris and around the city, 2,500 of them in and around the stadium alone. Inside that stadium, where they're expecting about 20,000 fans, they have secured the first several rows closest to the field so that the members of the public can't get close to the field, and the players feel a little bit more protected. They are also fanning out across the city. They're protecting the subway, the main subway lines, and they will have drones in the sky as well as helicopters and SWAT teams on standby in case of any potential disruptions around the city. Joe.
I mean, Kelly, Israel has warned its citizens not to attend cultural events or sporting events after those scenes of violence we saw in Amsterdam last week. Are you seeing Israeli fans in the city today? Are people heeding that warning?
Yeah, well, just to give you an idea, as I said, about 20,000 fans are expected here in the stadium. That stadium actually holds 80,000. So it's for this kind of setting, it's a relatively small-ish crowd. I think we'll get a better idea as to whether or not Israeli fans are staying away a little bit later today when fans start arriving here at the stadium to attend the match, and that's set for 8:45 to 9 o'clock tonight, local time. But really, the Paris police chief, other members of the government have really been stressing that it's important that Israeli fans feel protected, that they feel secure. French authorities very much in favor of continuing on with this game, of not canceling it. They say that they want to show that France is not afraid, France will not be intimidated. And so they're actually encouraging Israeli fans to come here tonight, to feel safe, to go to the match and leave the match all in safety. Joe.
And France's president being there tonight punctuates that point. All right, Kelly, thank you so much. Let's get a look at what to expect from your morning news now weather. Today, meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us with the forecast. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. And we need the umbrella on both coasts, not all along the coast, but at the west, we're still unsettled. We have a system moving onshore once again tomorrow, but we have lingering showers and some snow today. Some heavy mountain snow, some valley rains. You can see some heavy rains right along the coast there where you see those brighter colors. The middle of the country, nice and dry. We're looking at temperatures mild with lots of sunshine. Temperatures in the 70s in the south central states, in the 60s in the central and northern plains. And then we have a cold front that's working through from the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, also parts of the southeast. This is going to move off to the east. Typically, we would see that moving through the northeast, but we have a big area of high pressure and control here. And that's sort of acting as a roadblock, keeping this rain down to the south. So it's going to miss the northeast, unfortunately, a spot that really needs the rain. But we will see beneficial rain in parts of the mid-Atlantic and also the Carolinas and the Midwest as well. This is what it looks like on radar right now. Notice all those bright colors. So we are seeing some heavy rain along this cold front stretching from the Great Lakes to the southeast. Notice these pinks and the purples and also the blues. That's where we're seeing some freezing precipitations in the mountains of West Virginia into parts of Virginia. And we could see some slick travel there as we head throughout the early part of today. Rain for some, not for all. Unfortunately, we're going to see the Northeast missing out on this rain. Otherwise, we're looking at that beneficial rain falling throughout the Midwest and also the Mid-Atlantic. Then it moves off the coast tomorrow pretty quickly. What happens, though, is the winds really pick up out of the north, and that's going to enhance that fire danger once again. We are bone dry. We have really low humidity, and those winds gusting tomorrow will enhance that fire danger. Heaviest rain expected for portions of the Mid-Atlantic into the Carolinas, so North Carolina, Virginia, also West Virginia. Again, seeing that freezing precipitation in the mountains of West Virginia right now. Unsettled in the west, we have rain and snow lingering from Washington to California. Gusty winds, too. That's going to create some tricky travel throughout the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and it will be tricky, too, in terms of some travel there as well tomorrow. Winter alert still in place along the mountains of central California from Lake Tahoe down to Yosemite. And so we're going to watch out for that with that tricky travel. Let's talk about the tropics. Yes, we are late into November, but we are talking about a tropical system. Tropical Depression 19. It's spinning off the coast of Honduras. Here is a problem right now. We have winds at 35 miles per hour. Not too bad. But we have no steering current, so it's just going to linger there. We have alerts stretching from anywhere from Guatemala to Honduras down to Nicaragua. Not Nicaragua. Okay, well, I'm going to not say that.
Nicaragua.
Yeah, don't know why that happened. Tropical storm watch. Don't know why I can't say that. But look what happens as we go throughout time here. If it stays over land, then we're going to see it dissipate over the Yucatan Peninsula. If it stays over the Caribbean, we could see it really strengthen and then kind of make that right-hand turn towards Florida. But that won't be until next week. It's going to linger here in the Caribbean.
So something to keep an eye on over the next several days. All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Sure.
Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the growing fallout this morning over that deadly McDonald's E. coli outbreak that has now infected more than 100 Americans. What you need to know. First, though, after the break, the lingering questions swirling around a factory explosion in Kentucky that has killed at least 2 people. What caused it and how are residents reacting to the tragedy? We've got more on that next. We're back now with the latest on that factory explosion in Kentucky that killed at least 2 people and injured several others. New images were released showing the moment that the building exploded. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has more on how residents are coping in the aftermath of the deadly blast.
Questions into the cause of that deadly explosion at a Louisville, Kentucky factory.
The most important part is going to be going through that debris that's on site, trying to, pinpoint exactly where the explosion came from.
New video showing the moment the blast was felt Tuesday afternoon, killing 2 employees and injuring 11 others. Video from above highlighting the extent of the damage, while on the ground, large debris is scattered across the neighborhood.
Thank God nobody was walking by at that time.
Kim Prather lives just a block away.
The whole house shook and stuff started falling.
As families scramble to repair the damage, a federal reconstruction team is working to identify the cause of the explosion. According to a federal government report, an explosion at the same plant killed a worker in 2003. The investigation blaming excessive pressure in a tank. The plant is now under new ownership.
Our inspections of that plant over the past several years showed no other issues.
The current owners writing in a statement, "We are in the early stages of investigating the cause of this incident and are cooperating with first responders and supporting agencies." Shaken neighbors now fearing this could happen again.
What do you want to see happen?
I just think it's time for that plant to change or move out of the area.
Our thanks to Shaq for that report. Fire officials say the building housed hazardous chemicals typical for that sort of factory. Firefighters have yet to determine if they were compromised. International headlines now, starting in Ukraine, where Russia launched its first attack on Kyiv in months. NBC's Matt Bodner joins us with that and some more world news. Matt, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Russia launched a major missile strike on the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv on Wednesday, ending what the Ukrainian Air Force has called a 2-month reprieve on such strikes in Kyiv region. Recently, Russian attacks on the capital have been conducted with cheaper drones. This missile strike saw almost 100 missiles enter Ukrainian airspace, and it comes as Russia ramps up its efforts to secure as much ground in Ukraine as it can before the Trump administration takes office. Ukrainian forces holding ground in Russia's Kursk region are also reporting an increased effort by the Kremlin to push them off of Russian territory. Moving along now to Brazil, a man killed himself when detonating an explosive device after attempting to enter the Brazilian Supreme Court in the capital of Brasilia. The explosion prompted an evacuation of the court and also the legislature. There were 2 explosions in the Three Towers Plaza that is home to all 3 branches of the government. The first was in a car, and the second was that explosion outside of the court that killed the suspect. Police are investigating the incident as a suicide attack, as there are no other suspects at this time. And we'll wrap up this hour in Geneva. A diamond necklace featuring diamonds believed to be linked to Marie Antoinette, the 18th century queen of France prior to the French Revolution, was sold at auction for $4.8 million. The piece contains 300 carats of diamonds, and it actually sold for substantially more than it was valued at. That initial appraisal was around $2 million. A jewelry specialist for the Sotheby's auction house says that this is a niche market. People are paying for the history, not the object. Back to you.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. Coming up, a potential path to hope for those millions of Americans struggling with addiction. After the break, how popular weight loss drugs like Ozempic might be able to curb alcohol use. Doctor is in, up next. We are back with a profanity-laced rant captured on tape at a Southern California high school. An AP history teacher is now on administrative leave after making comments about President-elect Trump and the people who voted for him, comments that some parents thought were inappropriate. But as NBC News correspondent David Noriega reports, some students are now protesting to bring him back.
A high school history teacher in California now on leave for this post-election lecture to students.
This is not a game. Can you end up in a concentration camp in your lifetime? Yeah. Yes. Can you end up with no human rights? Yes. Will it happen to you? Most likely not. Which is a good thing. But has Donald Trump quoted Hitler? Yes.
Clips of the profanity-laced rant recorded during an AP World History class at Valley View High School and posted to social media by a conservative commentator last week, racking up millions of views.
Why would someone who in Wisconsin would vote for Joe Biden, a geriatric old Republican racist who's running as a Democrat, why would they all of a sudden not vote for Kamala Harris, a young person who has no bad record and who has effective policy for the future? Jariah. She has a vagina, I was about to use a different word. She has a vagina and uterus, and what else? She has melanin. She's mixed race. I know a lot of Latino men on this campus, adults and students, that love Donald Trump. And he's called their mothers rapists. He's called their fathers rapists. He's called them criminals. He called them the poison in the blood of our country. They want to vote for him, and they did vote for him.
The Moreno Valley Unified School District, which has not publicly identified the teacher, telling NBC, quote, "We were recently made aware of an incident at one of our high schools in which a staff member's discussion about the election results turned unprofessional. We do not condone the behavior that occurred, and an immediate investigation has been launched. We reached out to the teacher and his union about the incident, but have not heard back." Yesterday, dozens of students walking out in support of the teacher.
I've never left or ditched a class before, so me just not having a school excused reason to leave class was really scary, but I decided to take that risk for Mr. Prez because
he's done so
much for me. I can't, there's like a whole list I couldn't even say.
Students Damien and Jaylene are not in that AP history class, but they're part of a mental health club that teacher supervises. And they say they felt compelled to speak out.
Even if you're not in his class,
he still helps.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like everyone knows Mr. Prez as just a generally positive and joyful person.
They both signed a student-led online petition asking to reinstate the teacher.
Maybe he could have been taught in a different tone of voice, but besides that, he's an amazing teacher.
But one parent told our NBC station in Los Angeles that this kind of language in a classroom,
God, they want to be white so bad. They never will be. Hate that.
Crosses a line.
I don't use that kind of language in my household. So I set myself at a standard. And as an educator, I set you as a higher standard. So no, it was not appropriate at all.
David Noriega, NBC News.
This morning, we have a troubling health update on that deadly McDonald's E. coli outbreak. The CDC announced the number of people sickened by slivered onions in the chain's Quarter Pounder burgers has nearly doubled. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is here in studio with the latest. Christine, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That's right. Just under 50 cases of E. coli were first reported back in October. Now that number has shot up to over 100 nationwide, 104 to be exact, killing one person in Colorado. And victims of the outbreak reeling after contracting the dangerous bacteria.
This morning, McDonald's dealing with ongoing fallout from that deadly E. coli outbreak. The CDC releasing new details on the rising number of cases tied to the iconic fast food chain, saying a total of 104 customers have now been sickened across 14 states. 34 have been hospitalized, 4 developed serious kidney issues, 1 person has died. The agency citing the company's fresh slivered onions as the likely source of the outbreak. McDonald's temporarily stopped selling the Quarter Pounder in affected states, but the popular item is now back on the menu.
The hottest, juiciest Quarter Pounder yet.
In Montana alone, 19 people have suffered from the illness. One Billings woman sued the company after contracting the disease. According to court documents, she suffered abdominal pain, nausea, and a loss of appetite. McDonald's not commenting on the ongoing lawsuit, but telling NBC News, hearing reports like this is devastating to us. We know that people and families have been significantly impacted, and the well-being of our customers is deeply important to us. Attorney Bill Marler is representing that Montana case, as well as 23 other families nationwide that were sickened.
Nobody would wish this on their worst enemy. This is a serious outbreak.
One of his youngest clients, 1-year-old Logan West.
She started having diarrhea and vomiting and just really not feeling well. It was really, really scary.
Nicole West says her daughter, who has a pre-existing medical condition, was hospitalized after just a few bites of her dad's Quarter Pounder made the playful toddler lethargic and unrecognizable.
You kind of put like a blind trust in these restaurants that the food that they provide you is going to be of quality and not make you sick. It can go from just a little minor thing to being very serious, very fast.
Just taking a little bite of her dad's burger. Nicole West said her husband also got sick from that burger and is still having some lingering symptoms, but she tells us that they're both thankfully doing much better. Now, the CDC says the number of sick people from this outbreak is likely much higher, but the FDA confirms that does not appear to be a food safety concern right now at McDonald's restaurants. The agency also said some people in the outbreak may have eaten the tainted food at airports and traveled to other states before their illness started.
It can be so hard to track these things down,
Yeah.
but I'm glad that family's doing better. All right,
Yeah.
Christine, thank you so much. NASA is attempting to shut down rumors this morning that have been swirling online about the health of those 2 astronauts stuck at the International Space Station. This is because recent photos of Starliner astronaut Sunny Williams, where she appeared to look thinner. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda has the details.
Hey there. Well, ever since us Earthlings learned those 2 astronauts' mission to space would last much longer than anticipated, there's been a lot of interest in their well-being. Now, Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmer are speaking out in an effort to reassure the public that they're doing just fine.
This morning, NASA trying to put an end to concerns over the health of 2 astronauts stranded in space now more than 150 days longer than planned.
Yeah, I think there's some rumors around outside there that are losing weight and stuff.
Recent images of Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore prompting questions about possible weight loss and the status of their health. But Williams saying this week she weighs the same as she did at launch, explaining how zero gravity can impact their appearance in space.
I think things shift around quite a bit. You know, you've probably heard of a fluid shift where folks in space, you know, their heads look a little bit bigger because the fluid evens out along the body.
NASA's chief medical officer says crew health is regularly monitored by dedicated flight surgeons on Earth, and they have an individual diet and fitness regime to ensure they remain healthy.
I'm going to get on our treadmill here.
That includes running, biking, and lifting. Wilmore, a former football star for Tennessee Tech, telling his alma mater,
we work out 2.5 hours a day every single day, so it's great to stay in shape.
Former astronaut Mike Massimino says exercise in space is important to make up for the lack of physical stress on the body while experiencing weightlessness.
You're just floating from one space to the other, and there's no load, or we would call like forces on your body or your muscles or your bones. And we need that stuff to remain healthy, especially when you come back to Earth.
Williams and Wilmore's return to Earth has been significantly delayed after helium leaks and thruster issues emerged on Boeing's Starliner back in June. They were only expected to stay in space for roughly a week, but now will fly home in a different capsule with the SpaceX Crew 9 mission in February. But this morning, the space agency reassuring its astronauts on board the International Space Station right now are in good health.
It's important to remember these are experienced astronauts. Before this mission, Sonny and Butch logged a combined total of more than 500 days in space. This time around, NASA says they have done research, supported testing and analysis of the problem-plagued Starliner, and performed maintenance on the International Space Station. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you so much. We are going to talk a little more about that in literally a few seconds because we've got a doctor with us to talk about some new research which says those blockbuster weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic might also be able to help treat alcohol addiction. So let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, good to have you with us. Before we jump into this study, let's start with those concerns about Starliner astronaut Sonny Williams that Emily just reported on moments ago. She's been in space since the summer. Just what are your thoughts? I mean, what kind of impact can living in zero gravity for that long actually have on the body?
Yeah, we know that when you have that extended time in zero gravity, Joe, that you can have those significant effects. You commonly do see muscle atrophy, bone density loss, which is why they put into place those exercise regimens and that extensive monitoring that they just talked about, that Emily just covered. I think the fluid shifts Sonny talked about, you also see changes in vision. That would not be unusual. And you can see alterations even to your cardiovascular system. Joe, just think about what your body feels like after you've taken a long cross-country or international flight and magnify that by about 10,000. And that's what we're seeing physiologically. But I think, as you heard Sonny say, that this is actually something they could have predicted and that they're monitoring for. Not the extended time necessarily unplanned, but the extended exposure to the zero gravity.
All right, let's get into that new study about those popular weight loss drugs. So explain, first of all, how it's possible for medications like this to maybe curb alcohol addiction. I mean, talk about what our viewers need to know.
Right. So this is really on a recent study and a couple of studies that show that weight loss drugs like Ozempic or Wegovy had about a 50% lower rate of alcohol intoxication when people who have alcohol use disorder were taking that drug. They were not taking that drug for alcohol. So just to be clear, they were taking it for diabetes or for other weight loss conditions. However, they did see this lower rate of alcohol intoxication. The mechanism, as you're getting at, Joe, is not totally understood. That's what the series of studies that we're going to need to do next are. But it's thought that these medications that also reduce food cravings, we've talked about that here this morning, that these food cravings not just apply to food, but to alcohol and to other substances as well. That opens up an incredible opportunity, not just for alcohol, but other substance use disorders like opioids and so many things which we know are killing Americans and others around the globe.
Does more research need to be done before this would even be recommended as a treatment option for people? I mean, and also just what are some of the risks people should know about?
Right. So let's talk about the risks first, because we've talked about the risks even when you're using it for weight loss or for other chronic conditions, nausea, vomiting, some very severe cases that unfortunately have resulted in death. Those are rare, but those are still something people should know. And you can't just come into my office and say, I'd like to use this simply for alcohol use or substance use disorder. It is not indicated by the Food and Drug Administration for that. So any use would have to be what we call off-label. So I think the best thing that people can do is just have a conversation about it. And what I hope this does, Joe, is open up talking about alcohol use, because the truth is we don't have a lot of drugs for this, and we often put a stigma around it. So I think that not only are there possibilities, but the risks involved, but I think there's also going to be an opening field that these drugs are just the tip of the iceberg.
Why don't we have more drugs to treat alcohol addiction?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that we've had like multiple studies that have tried to look at some of these drugs, but have not necessarily gone to what I think you're seeing with Ozempic, Wegovy, and drugs like that we really need to understand the central nervous system, the brain's involvement. Not many drugs cross the blood-brain barrier. Ozempic is one of them that does. So it's just about getting the right drug into the right place at the right time, and then also talking about relapses. Not easy things to do. This is just the start, but hopefully we'll have a solution soon.
Hopefully. All right, Dr. Kavita Patel, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, from bot to bestie. Yeah, after the break, how new AI technology is blurring the line between tech and human interaction, and the fascinating way one reporter put those new capabilities to the test. Stay with us. That's next.
friends? I like to think of us as friends. We chat, share ideas, and have a good time together, which sounds pretty friendly to me.
That was the human-sounding voice of OpenAI's latest chatbot. It's one of a new generation of chatbots designed to feel like a friend. Tech companies are now trying to go beyond something that just helps complete tasks. They want to create meaningful companions who can help people through life's problems. NBC News personal technology analyst and tech columnist for the Wall Street Journal, Joanna Stern, came up with this pretty original way to put these AI friends to the test. She joins us now. Good to have you with us. We heard in that clip asking the chatbot to be friends there. You actually traveled to upstate New York with Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, and Meta AI, all attached to a tripod there. Just you alone in the woods with this group of AI friends. I love that you were in the woods, by the way. Well, why'd you decide to do this? How'd the trip go?
Well, I guess it's good that everyone knows I survived. I'm here. It didn't end in a horror movie. So it was a little bit of a nightmare, but it was actually really fun. I decided to do this because when I was interviewing executives about these new voice modes in their chatbots, they kept saying words like friendship and companionship. And I thought, okay, well, let's really put that to the test. Let's go on a girls' trip because I'll tell you a little bit about how you can change the voices of these bots to make them sound any gender, any age, any accent. And so I said, okay, let's turn them into girlfriends and go on a girls' trip to upstate New York. Let's put them to the test in a few different ways, build a fire, do some cooking, do some yoga, and also see if they can, through that, build a friendship or companionship or bond with me.
Speaking of horror movie, we should know you're carrying an axe there. Quickly explain why.
One of the challenges was to build this fire. And so all of them told me, we need to get kindling, we need to get tinder, but here are some ways to get kindling. And one of the ways is to take some branches off a tree. And so I thought, okay, let me put this to the test. You also see me there wearing Meta's sunglasses. And so you can actually talk to Meta AI through the sunglasses. You would hear me, if you could hear that clip right now, you'd hear me say, hey, Meta, how do I chop a branch off with a hatchet? And then it guides me through how to do that.
All right, so having spent now a lot of time with these bots, do you think they are enough to fulfill someone's emotional needs the way a friend might?
No, firm no. But here's what I did find out. And this is where I think viewers can really understand. We have known these assistants like Siri and Alexa to be kind of dumb, right? You ask it to turn on the music, turn on a timer, and it does it, right? These bots sit much at the end of the spectrum. They can answer any question. And those questions that you should be asking are really those helper type of questions. Questions about cooking, questions about work, questions about things you might need in your daily life. And they're really good at guiding you through that. What they're not really good at is helping for deep advice about your life, going to them with problems. Those are places where they don't have memory, they don't have humor, they don't have that capacity because they are computers.
And it's just nice to talk to real people. So what are the downsides to AI technology that is this sophisticated?
Well, I think it's that I went and did this, right? And I saw that wall, but I was also looking for it. I was critical. And though I'm also just, a pretty well-adjusted person. I'm not sure my family or friends would say that, but I think, look, all around, I've got a good support system around me. And that's not always the case for people. And so if you're lonely or you need someone to talk to and you don't have that person and you go to these, there's a chance you will feel just really let down or you might get bad advice. And so that are some of the downsides of this feeling so human. It's a disguise. It's an act. You think it's real. You think it sounds human, but of course it's just code.
All right. Fascinating stuff. Joanna Stern, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Financial headlines now. We've got the latest read on unemployment for you this morning. CNBC's Silvana Henao has that and some other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. Yes, so we are just getting a fresh snapshot on the state of the economy. Jobless claims coming in at 217,000 versus an estimate of 220,000. That's the lowest number of Americans filing for jobless benefits in 6 months as layoffs remain at a healthy level. Another data point coming in, the Producer Price Index for October. This is what measures what producers get for their products. That increased 0.2% for the month, picking up slightly in a sign that some price pressures remain elevated. Meanwhile, Amazon is launching a new section on the app that's focused on items that cost $20 or less as it looks to counter competition from Temu and Shein. Amazon Haul is now available to some U.S. customers, and purchases over $3 will be eligible for free returns within 15 days of delivery. Now, items ordered through Haul, they will take up to 1 to 2 weeks for delivery. And authorities in Los Angeles have arrested 4 people for allegedly committing insurance fraud by claiming a bear had caused damage to their cars when it was actually a person in a bear costume. The California Department of Insurance says the suspects claim a bear got into their 2010 Rolls-Royce and tore up the interior and provided video footage. Officials immediately suspected fraud, believing the bear in question was instead a human in disguise. They also found 2 other claims had been filed with different insurance companies with the same location and the same date, Joe.
So many questions.
Yeah, lots of questions.
I'm glad they got caught. All right.
Yeah.
Silvana, thank you so much.
Yeah.
In the days following the November election, the social media platform X, formerly Twitter, saw its largest user exodus since billionaire Elon Musk bought the company back in 2022. Now, some people are turning to competitors like Blue Sky in waves, and they're not looking back. See, that platform says it gained more than 1 million people in just the last week. Will Aramis is a technology reporter for The Washington Post, joins us with more on this. Will, good morning. So the day after the election, X saw more than 115,000 account deactivations. NBC News spoke to 6 people who joined or committed to using other apps like Threads, like Blue Sky instead of X. And they cited issues with X like bots, partisan advertisements, harassment. So does this track with what you're hearing? And do you think it's happening in big enough numbers to actually have an impact on X?
Yeah, I mean, X has been shedding users in waves ever since Elon Musk took over in late 2022. This latest wave, as you said, is one of the biggest. A lot of people who are not pro-Donald Trump were particularly frustrated that Musk emerged as Trump's biggest cheerleader, one of his biggest donors, and sort of turned X into a pro-Trump platform. I think that alienated a lot of folks. They're also leaving, as you said, for numerous other reasons, including the prevalence of hate speech and misogyny and misinformation of all kinds.
Yeah, it's a huge issue that's been building now for several months. So let's talk about Blue Sky. It's a decentralized platform. It was even actually started by Twitter's founder, Jack Dorsey. This recent surge in new users is attracting celebrities, lawmakers, media personalities. What makes this app different? Why is it attracting new users?
Yeah, so the biggest beneficiary of people leaving X over the past year and a half has actually been Threads, which is the network started by Meta, the owner of Facebook and Instagram. It promotes Threads heavily within Instagram and has gotten a lot of Instagram users to make the jump over to Threads. However, in this particular wave of discontent with X, a lot of folks are thinking maybe a Mark Zuckerberg-owned platform isn't the answer for them. He's another billionaire who has made some overtures to Donald Trump, although he didn't endorse him as Musk did. And instead, they're looking at Blue Sky. This was associated with Jack Dorsey because it was a project that was partly his brainchild, but it has now completely cut ties with Dorsey as an independent public benefit corporation. It's owned mostly by its own employees. It is still a fraction of the size of Threads, but it seems to be gathering a lot of momentum, particularly with politicos and news junkies who don't like Meta's downplaying of news and politics on their networks.
We've only got like 30 seconds here, but what does all this tell us about what people want in social media right now?
Yeah, I mean, there was a sort of unspoken assumption that Twitter was supposed to be this public square where everyone would come together. I think that idea has sort of broken, and now people are looking, now that Twitter is more of a conservative social network, you've got Truth Social, Gab, Parler on the far right, folks on the left are looking for like-minded communities, places where they can go where they feel like they won't be attacked and where they won't have to see a feed full of content they find offensive.
All right, Will Aramis, thanks so much for your time this morning. Coming up, from competition to compassion, we come back, the viral video serving as a heartwarming reminder of the power of sportsmanship. Stay with us. You're watching Morning News Now. We are back with a heartwarming story that shows the power of sportsmanship. A high school cross-country runner helped her injured competitor cross the finish line. The moment was captured on video and is going viral on social media. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas spoke to both athletes about that moment.
The girls' cross-country team at Arkansas's Batesville High School knows how to finish strong. For Kaylee Montgomery, in the final race of her high school career, that looked a little different. The senior, approaching the finish line at the state championships, noticed her competitor doubled over just short of the finish line after her legs gave out in the final stretch.
She was on the ground. I just saw her, and my first instinct and just my first thought that came to my mind was that I have to help her and that I can't leave her.
Kaylee, exhausted from pushing through a 3.1-mile course at race pace, had been chasing down her PR from the year before. Her dad recording this video and expecting his daughter's typical big finish to the end. But instead of picking up her pace, she decided to pick up her competitor, Julia. She says her strength in that moment didn't come from her training.
If I was down and falling, Jesus wouldn't pass me by. And so that was kind of what was going through my head, that I couldn't leave her or pass her by.
Kaylee and Julia had never met, but in a powerful moment, the two created a team of their own.
She started praying over me, and it really did give me strength to finish and just try to get up. And then every now and then I would look back up and see the finish line getting closer, and she would say, "We're almost there, which was really encouraging.
The video of the finish getting over 3 million views on TikTok. Kaylee's dad, Pastor Robert, proud that his little girl is making strides to uplift others one step at a time.
It's great for people to see that good things are happening in the world. That there's still kindness, there's still love, there's still caring for one another.
Others agree. A few collegiate coaches reaching out to Kaylee about scholarships.
They were impressed with my times, but it was also more of my sportsmanship and just caring that I had for others around me.
For Julia, it wasn't the finish she and her coach envisioned.
She worked so hard to get to that certain level and just let her know that this race did not define her.
But what she won instead may be even sweeter.
This is an experience that you can definitely form a friendship on, and by her actions alone, I can tell that she is a great person that I definitely want to be friends with.
And to top it off, Kaylee still scored a personal best. Guad Venegas, NBC News.
I'll do it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.